When 20-year-old Karina Holmer went missing, and her upper body was subsequently found in a nearby dumpster, everyone was convinced that the perpetrator would be swiftly found. After all, the body usually provides a variety of clues as to who committed the crime. The idea that someone cut a body in half and haphazardly disposed of it and then proceeded to get away with it for over 20 years is unfathomable. Not to mention the pain Karina's parents live with to this day, knowing that whoever committed this crime never had to face any consequences. And although nobody's been held responsible for the crime, there were multiple suspects. And to this day, people disagree as to who they believe murdered and dismembered the 20-year-old au pair. So, about Karina. She was born in September of 1975 in Sweden. She was a really friendly, outgoing woman, excited for what life had to bring. Her adventurous spirit was evident, so nobody was surprised when she decided to go to the US to work as an au pair. Karina wasn't afraid of hard work and knew that going to the States to brush up her English skills while getting some additional work experience was an opportunity of a lifetime. It's just the kind of thing you'd want to do when you're in your early 20s, have no responsibilities, and want to make incredible memories. She was ecstatic when she found the family she was going to be working for. Frank Rapp, a photographer, and his wife, Susan Nichter, were an artistic couple who lived in Dover, just outside of Boston, with their 2 children. Despite being very small and having just about 5,000 residents, Dover is well known for its beauty. It's a magnet for the wealthy, as it's peaceful and picturesque, while being only 30 minutes away from Boston. At first, Karina seemed to slip into her life in the US without any issues. The children she was hired to care for adored her, and on the weekends she'd head into Boston with her au pair friends. Karina was a small-town girl, and being in a big city like Boston was a novelty to her. Armed with a fake ID and access to her host family's South Boston apartment, she was out clubbing, drinking, and dancing until the early hours of the morning. From the outside, it looked like she was having the time of her life. But that picture-perfect image didn't last long. The upbeat, cheerful letters she had been sending home slowly shifted in tone. She wrote to her family that she was thinking about ending her trip early, that America wasn't what she had hoped it would be. However, she didn't really disclose any further details. Details which would have been invaluable after her disappearance. After all, maybe if she was more forthcoming about the family life or the people she was surrounding herself with, the police would have had more leads. There were red flags, though, as she sent a concerning letter to her friend back in Sweden. Karina wrote, "Something terrible has happened. I can't tell you right now what it is, but I will tell you when I get home." It makes you wonder, why can't she tell her friend what happened? Does she just not want to disclose it in the letter? Is she afraid the family or someone else might read the letter and retaliate? Karina would never get the chance to explain. She would never make it back home. On the night of June 21st, which was a Friday, 1996, Karina and her friends were getting ready to celebrate the summer solstice. Reports say that they got ready at the loft I mentioned earlier, the one belonging to the host family. They often went to a club called Zanzibar, and this night was no different. By closing time, Karina was noticeably intoxicated, and staff eventually asked her to leave. Karina didn't try to argue back, but willingly left the club. It looks like, to her, the party wasn't over, as around 3:20 a.m., she was spotted outside in an alley, laughing, singing, and dancing with a homeless man. Take this with a grain of salt, but I found a post on Reddit written by someone who claimed to be friends with Karina, as well as the 2 girls she was out partying with that night. This person wrote that Karina's friends, Pramila and Crystal, met some guys during their night out and didn't really pay attention to where Karina was, something I'm sure they regret to this day. I couldn't imagine living with that level of guilt, knowing that had I only checked on my friend, maybe she would still be around. Still, as careless as their behavior was, let's keep in mind that they are not the ones responsible. All we can do is learn from their mistakes and remember to always make sure everyone got home safely, especially when we're talking about women. The last known sighting of Karina was at the corner of Tremont Street and Boylston Place. After that, she vanished. 2 days later, on Sunday, June 23rd, a homeless man was rummaging through a dumpster in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood. He came across a heavy, dark green garbage bag. Curious, he tore it open and froze. The poor guy found the severed upper half of Karina's body, discarded like a piece of trash. The contents of the bag, later weighed at 48 pounds, left no clue as to where the remaining body parts could be found. Detective Thomas O'Leary from Boston Police was assigned to the case, and he would remember what he found at the scene for the rest of his life. The markings around Karina's neck told investigators what had happened. She'd been strangled, likely with a rope or cord. The autopsy confirmed it. But the most chilling discovery was how cleanly her body had been cut. Evidence pointing to an electric saw. Whoever did this had washed her remains before carefully wrapping and discarding them. In terms of the investigation, due to the violent nature of the crime and because of how clean the dismemberment was, many people immediately thought this either had to be the work of a serial killer or a professional. The fact that forensic scientists didn't have access to the lower part of the victim's body posed a serious problem. It made it that much more difficult to establish if the attack was sexual in nature. Lack of that evidence, or at least some ideas for the motive of the crime, made for a much more difficult investigation. So, who were the main suspects in Karina's murder? Number 1, understandably, police first needed to rule out those closest to Karina. The police department wasted no time questioning the host family the young woman worked for. And why would the family be a suspect in the first place? For one, the letter Karina sent to her friend, in which she mentioned that something terrible has happened. What could have possibly happened that had her afraid to let her friend know what was going on? Was it too embarrassing or too dangerous to talk about? Did she fear her letters were being read? Karina was the 5th au pair the family had employed. Why such a high turnover? Another interesting detail was that a fire took place in the dumpster the family shared with other occupants of the building. However, nothing suspicious or relevant to the crime was found at the scene. Also, at least one former au pair has come forward claiming Frank Rapp, the father, was acting inappropriately towards them. But can we really extrapolate that an affair, or even worse, a rape, took place? Frank's alibi was backed up by his family, which, I'm afraid, is not the most reassuring. His wife, Susan, who was an artist, created a piece which raised some eyebrows as well. If you're watching this, the painting will be on screen. As you can see, the painting is rather odd, with some saying it depicts a woman being cut in half. Personally, I don't see it. It seems to be in line with Susan's other artworks, and at least to me, the woman appears to be levitating. She's in one piece. Also, while both of the properties were searched, no evidence that would point at them being guilty was found. Number 2. Karina was dating a local police officer. I tried my best to find any information on him, but came back empty-handed. Despite looking at multiple sources, I wasn't even able to find his name, and the only piece of information available was that the officer was cleared as apparently he was on vacation at the time of the murder. Although it's possible the Boston Police Department may have wanted to protect the identity of one of their own, especially in order to spare him the scrutiny and suspicions that would be certainly pointed at the officer, it seems slightly unjustified. Maybe I'm paranoid, but we've witnessed so many cases where the partner was the perpetrator, as well as cases where the police department didn't even want to entertain the idea of one of their own committing such atrocities. Needless to say, nobody wants bad publicity. But we need to remember a woman was killed, and the least that could have been done for her was make sure that all the avenues were explored to their full potential. Which leaves us with the last, most plausible explanation, which is that she was attacked by a stranger. The police found a partial fingerprint on the bag the body was found in, and it wasn't a match for any of the family members or the friends. It also couldn't be found in the criminal database at the time, meaning that the suspect was likely not a career criminal, at least not one that had been caught. Let's keep in mind her body was found, give or take 30 hours since the last time she was seen alive, which gave the perpetrator ample time to cut her in half and then meticulously clean the body. Let's also remember the dumpster she was found in was located about 2 kilometers away from the club. Of course, since it was 1996, CCTV was not omnipresent like it is today, so the detectives couldn't rely on help from any neighborhood cameras. There were a couple of other people mentioned as suspects during the investigation, but there was no evidence, which brings us to now, 29 years later, still without closure. Someone has to know something, but seeing how nobody's been forthcoming for all this time, I wouldn't count on anyone coming forward now. Hopefully, Karina's family was able to move forward to some extent. Although I can only imagine something like this happening to a loved one would probably haunt every day of your life. Just seems like an act of brutality like this wouldn't be a one and done in a killer's life. It just seemed too premeditated, too clean, too intimate. That will be all for this video. What do you guys think happened to Karina? And maybe you have some information I missed while researching this case. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.